This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
USAA knows dynamic duos can save the day, like superheroes and sidekicks or auto and home insurance. With USAA, you can bundle your auto and home and save up to 10%. Learn more and get a quote at USAA.com/bundle. Restrictions apply.
If you wanted to support me and also listen to every single episode of this podcast ad-free, then you can do so on Patreon, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. I will link to everything down in the show notes below. And if you wanted to support me for free, you can subscribe on YouTube. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Hello, and welcome back to 3D Printing Basics. This is episode number 62, and in this episode, we're going to be talking about 3D scanners. We're going to be going over what they are, how they can help you in your 3D printing workflow, and also go over a couple of 3D scanners that are on the market right now. Before we get into it, I wanted to say that there's going to be a form link in the description. If you have any podcast episode ideas or just any questions in general for me, please fill out that form and I would love to get back to you. So just wanted to point that out, that's there. Other than that, I just wanted to say thank you guys for all the support. It really means the world to me. I've gotten tons of positive feedback on this podcast, which is why I continue to make episodes even 62 episodes later. Just wanted to thank you guys for that. So with that being said, let's jump right into today's episode. So first things first, let's talk about what a 3D scanner actually is. A 3D scanner is a device and it captures three-dimensional objects. Pretty much whatever you would want to model or 3D print, whether you want to replicate something or whether you have an example made out of clay, even Play-Doh, anything like that. You can put this object in your 3D scanner or in front of it, scan it, and then that scanner will create a computerized digital model of your real-life object. And this could save you a lot of time when you're designing because you wouldn't have to go through and measure everything. You wouldn't have to go through and go piece by piece, build it up, design it yourself. But it's not all sunshine and rainbows. I do want to say that 3D scanning isn't as simple as just putting an object down, scanning it, and then you have a perfect model to 3D print. There's a lot of steps and there's a lot more things that go into it, especially because 3D scanners in of themselves are very expensive. The cheapest ones that I'm able to find are around $500, and it looks like if you want something that's got any kind of quality to it, you're going to be spending at least $1,000. And even then, the $1,000 3D scanners are the hobbyist consumer levels, and they're not as good as the super expensive scanners that are, $2,000 to $5,000. And so you're going to have to do some additional work when you get these scanners. But like I said, I just wanted to reiterate that it's not all sunshine and rainbows. It's not just scanning it and then you're done. There are extra steps involved, but a 3D scanner, it scans an object and it makes a digitized 3D model of the object in your computer. I feel like the best way to kind of describe how a 3D scanner works is sort of like how animals use echolocation in the wild. The 3D scanner, it either bounces light or a laser or something like that off of the object, and then when it bounces back, it gathers that information and it can tell based off how long it took, where it bounced off, and then it uses that information to kind of create the shape that is a part of that model. And so that is kind of how a 3D scanner works. I know there are two different types of 3D scanners. There are ones who actually emit the light. They use like a white light pattern, or they use the laser. And then there are others who use a different method. They use either the ambient light in the room or they use the ambient radiation to capture the data points that they need in order to build the model correctly. Then what it does is it takes all the data points that it collected and makes what's called a point cloud. And what this is just all the data points that it's accurately measured and puts them together to create the 3D scanned shape. And basically, the higher up in price you go with the scanners, the more data points that you're going to have in the point cloud, and therefore the more accurate model that you're going to have. I've seen something like the $500 scanners get 17,000 cloud points, while the higher end ones get millions of cloud points. So that's something to think about in terms of how nice you want to go with your 3D scanners, how accurate and detailed you need your parts that you're scanning to be, because like I said, those data points vary wildly from scanner to scanner, and so that's an important thing to think about. But yeah, once it builds those data points and has enough of them, it creates the point cloud, which is just going to be the object that you are scanning, and then you can export that from the software to an STL file, which you can then use as your 3D model. This episode is brought to you by PCBWay. Ready to take your electronics projects to the next level? PCBWay offers everything you need, from custom PCBs to 3D printing and even CNC machining, all under one roof. They're trusted by engineers and makers worldwide for their exceptional quality and fast turnaround. And here's a special deal for listeners of 3D Printing Basics. Use the promo code 3D Printing Squared, SQUARED, to get $10 off your first order. Start your next project with PCBWay and see the difference for yourself. Head over to PCBWay.com today. Now, there are two main types of 3D scanners. You're going to have your handheld, and then you're going to have your standalone 3D scanners. And the handheld ones are going to be really good for if you have larger objects that you want to scan. For example, say a car, because you can hold them in your hand and then you can point them anywhere. So it basically has an infinite range. Meanwhile, the standalone ones are going to be on a tripod, or they're going to have something like that, and they usually come equipped with a revolving table to put your model on so that it spins around so that you can get an accurate scan and not have to move it. And that's going to be great for your smaller objects because it already is built for that defined point of that rotating table, and it's going to be really good at getting the high quality detail that you are looking for in your parts. And this is really going to help a 3D printer's workflow, especially if you're running a business, by just the amount of time that it saves. Yes, you do have to do extra work. It's not just scan and print. You are going to have to most likely make some modifications. You're going to have to change some dimensions here and there. But at the end of the day, if you do it right and you know what you're doing, it can save you a ton of time when you're trying to design parts from scratch, because you don't need to. You can sit it on whatever surface. You can scan the part that you want to print, and then you can get a rough, nearly finished. If you do it right, you can get a nearly finished 3D model that only requires a couple tweaks and is then ready to print. And so that can really save you a lot of time, but it can also cost you a lot of time if you don't really know what you're doing, because you can end up going back and forth, and the model could still turn out not quite right in the end, especially if you need an exact one-to-one duplicate. So that's definitely something to consider. If you do it right, it can save you a ton of time. But also, if you don't quite know what you're doing, and especially if you're in a business setting where you have timelines and you have quotes, and at the end of the day, you could just be fiddling the whole entire day, and it could be costing you time and money. So that's something to consider when you're getting a 3D scanner, is you really need to know what you're doing, and you need to consider what you're using it for. Okay, now that we've gone over what a 3D scanner is and how it can help your workflow, let's get into a couple 3D scanners that are on the market. And by far, during my research, the most popular one that I found for the hobbyist consumer level 3D printer is going to be the Einstar prosumable portable 3D scanner. This 3D scanner is a handheld scanner, so you hold it in your hand and you can scan a wide range of objects varying in size. So this is going to be the kind that I was talking about, where you could scan a car with it if you wanted to, because it's handheld, you can hold it wherever. It does come in a little bit expensive. I'm looking at the website right now, and it comes in at $759 US, but especially if you're a business, the way I'm looking at it, since being a business and considering getting a 3D scanner, is how much design time would this save me to the point where it pays for itself. So that's definitely something to consider, especially if you're owning a business. If you're just looking to get it to mess around with, and that's certainly fine too, but just know it's definitely on the more expensive side. So $759 US. It has very good reviews. I've seen it be very popular and kind of marketed as quote unquote the 3D printer for the prosumer level. So that's definitely something to look at. I will link it in the show notes, but this is kind of what it seems to me. Again, just my opinion here, but the kind of one, if you're looking to get into 3D scanning, it seems to be the perfect blend between quality and price. And that's not at all saying that it's a cheap price. I know that this is very expensive and it's a lot of money for a lot of people, including myself. I mean, $750 is not cheap. That is incredibly expensive. So that's definitely something to consider carefully if you're looking at getting a 3D scanner. And the other one that I wanted to touch on was the Revo Point Metro X. It's a blue laser line and full field structured light 3D scanner. So this is the one where I was talking about, where it bounces blue laser light and also just light itself off of your model to be able to get the data points back and build that point cloud. And this is actually the one that I was looking at getting. This one is also a handheld scanner, but it can also be put on a tripod. It has a holder, so this one is kind of the best of both worlds because you can do one or the other. So that's something to consider. It honestly looks like a Wii remote now that I look at it. If those of you who have played the Wii, let me know. But this is also a very expensive one. This one comes in at $899 US, so $900. It has what it says, four flexible scanning modes. It's got volumetric accuracy up to 0.03 millimeters, which is very good, and it says up to 7 million points in full field structure light mode and up to 800,000 points in multi-line laser mode. And so that's something to consider, is the amount of points that you're getting in your point cloud. That's just going to help with the detail in your object. Like I said, the more points you have in your point cloud, the more accurate and detailed your 3D model is going to be. So I'll link both of those in the description. In my research, these seem like kind of the 1 and 2 3D scanners on the market if you're looking to get into it. And then in my research, it stepped up to, multi-$1,000 3D scanners, but I didn't want to get into those. I just wanted to get into kind of the two main ones that are there if you're looking to get into it. So just something to consider there. But that's kind of all I have for you guys today. Thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you learned a little something about 3D scanning and how it could help your everyday 3D printing workflow. So thank you guys so much for listening, and I'll talk to you next time.